In a story that shocked the nation, 2 innocent children vanished, leaving a trail of mystery, deceit, and unthinkable tragedy. The Vallow-Daybell case became a chilling tale of doomsday beliefs, cult-like influence, and a series of murders that rocked a community to its core. Lori Vallow, a mother whose obsession with the end of days led her down a dark and dangerous path, became the face of a conspiracy that would unravel an unthinkable set of events. As authorities dug deeper into her relationship with Chad Daybell, a self-proclaimed prophet, the truth behind the murders of her children, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow, began to surface. This is the haunting story of the Vallow-Daybell Doomsday murders, where faith, manipulation, and deadly pursuit of prophecy converged in a chilling outcome. Hello and welcome to the Grim Files. In this episode, we're going to be exploring the famous and haunting Vallow-Daybell murders, the motives behind them, the trials that followed, and the consequences. So, without further ado, let's get started. The Vallow-Daybell Doomsday murders are a series of killings, including child murder, filicide, and spousal murder, committed by an American couple, Lori Vallow-Daybell and Chad Daybell, who led a Mormon religious group described by the journalists as a doomsday cult. The case was set in motion when Lori's daughter, Tylee Ryan, age 16, and younger adopted son, Joshua Jackson, J.J. Vallow, age 7, disappeared respectively on September 9 and September 23, 2019. Their remains were found in Rexburg, Idaho, on June 9, 2020. They had been buried on property belonging to Chad, who was Lori's lover at the time of their deaths and had become her husband by the time their bodies were found. The case also involved the killings of Lori's previous husband, Charles Vallow, and of Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, as well as the attempted murder of Lori's nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux. Lori's brother Alex Cox, who is believed by authorities to have participated in the crimes, died before he could be brought to justice. At the time of the murders, Chad and Lori were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but their beliefs had strayed far from mainstream Mormon doctrine. Chad, an apocalyptic author and publisher, claimed to experience visions of the future, recall multiple past lives, and prophesied that the world would end in July 2020. Lori embraced Chad's fringe ideologies, becoming convinced that she was a divine being with a critical role in the impending apocalypse. She came to believe that her family was an obstacle to fulfilling her so-called mission. Tylee was last seen alive on September 8, and JJ on September 22. In late November, after police questioned Lori about JJ's whereabouts, she and Chad abruptly abandoned their homes in Idaho and fled to Hawaii. As authorities searched for JJ, they discovered that Tylee was also missing. The case quickly gained media attention as Lori and Chad refused to cooperate with law enforcement. Investigations uncovered a series of suspicious events surrounding the children's disappearances, including the deaths of Lori and Chad's respective spouses and a failed murder attempt on Brandon Boudreaux, the then-husband of Lori's niece. Lori and Chad had married just 2 weeks after the death of Chad's first wife, Tammy. Following the revelation of the children's disappearances, Tammy's body was exhumed, and an autopsy confirmed that she had been asphyxiated. On February 20, 2020, Lori was arrested for desertion and non-support of her children. On June 9, police discovered the remains of Tylee and JJ during a search at Chad's home in Idaho. Chad was arrested on charges of destruction or concealment of evidence. On May 25, 2021, Lori and Chad were charged with the first-degree murders of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Prosecutors said that the couple had conspired with Cox to commit the murders, not only as part of their apocalyptic beliefs but also to remove obstacles to their affair and to collect life insurance money and the children's social security benefits, using religion to justify their crimes. Lori and Chad were tried separately. On May 12, 2023, Lori was found guilty of all charges related to the killings of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. On July 31, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. On May 30, 2024, Chad was also found guilty of all charges. On June 1, he was sentenced to death. After her sentencing in Idaho, Lori was extradited to Arizona, where she will have to stand trial twice, first for the killing of Charles Vallow, then for the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. Her first trial is scheduled to begin on March 31, 2025. Chad Guy Daybell was born on August 11, 1968, in Provo, Utah, into a Mormon family and was raised in the nearby city of Springville. He attended Brigham Young University and, after his first year, served as a missionary in New Jersey for 2 years before returning to complete his studies, graduating with a BA in journalism. On March 9, 1990, he married Tammy Douglas, and the couple had 5 children. Chad initially worked as a copy editor for the Standard Examiner in Ogden and supported himself at various times by working as a gravedigger and later as a cemetery sexton in Springville. His experiences in cemeteries inspired his first nonfiction book, 1 Foot in the Grave, published in 2001. Before that, in 1999, his first religion-themed novel, An Errand for Emma, was released by Cedar Fort Incorporated. In 2004, Chad and Tammy founded Spring Creek Book Company, which he used to self-publish books on end times prophecy and other religious themes for a Latter-day Saint audience. By the late 2000s, the Daybells faced financial difficulties, with Chad's publishing business generating an annual income of only around $2,000. To make ends meet, both he and Tammy took on part-time jobs, with Chad returning to work as a cemetery sexton. Eventually, his writings on apocalyptic themes gained traction, particularly among those focused on the second coming of Jesus, and he became a popular author and speaker in some radical Mormon circles. Over the years, he published numerous fiction and nonfiction books, many centered on dystopian futures and end-time scenarios, often featuring characters based on his family. Chad claimed to have had 2 near-death experiences that, according to him, gave him supernatural visions from beyond the veil. He asserted that these experiences allowed him to download information from the spirit world, which he claimed to portray accurately in his books. He was also a regular contributor to Another Voice of Warning, AVOW, a paid forum where he shared his visions and apocalyptic beliefs. As time went on, Chad's religious views became increasingly extreme. Tammy's brother-in-law, Jason Gwilliam, later noted that Chad's focus on preparing for the end times intensified around 2006 to 2007. By 2010, Chad began making prophecies about catastrophic events, including earthquakes and widespread destruction, and in 2013, he claimed to foresee a series of calamities that would devastate the Americas. During this period, Chad also collaborated with other apocalyptic authors, including Julie Rowe, whose works he published. Both shared similar prophecies and ideas about the spirit world, gaining popularity among Mormon preppers who were preparing for the end times. However, some of his associates, like author Suzanne Freeman, distanced themselves from him, citing concerns over his increasingly radical beliefs and departure from mainstream Mormon teachings. In 2015, Chad claimed to hear a voice, instructing him to move to Rexburg, Idaho, a location he believed would play a significant role in surviving future disasters. That June, he and Tammy relocated to Rexburg, where Chad continued to make apocalyptic predictions, including a vision of a massive earthquake devastating Utah later that year. Lori Ryan Daybell, also known as Lori Vallow-Daybell, was born Lori Noreen Cox on June 26, 1973, in Loma Linda, California. She grew up in a Mormon family. In 1992, at the age of 19, Lori married her high school boyfriend, but the marriage ended in divorce shortly after. She married again in October 1995 and had a son, Colby, in 1996 before divorcing in 1998. Lori worked as a hairdresser for a time and participated in the Mrs. Texas Beauty pageant in 2004. In 2001, Lori married Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr., who legally adopted Colby. The couple had a daughter, Tylee, in 2002 but divorced in 2005. Their separation was marked by a contentious custody battle in which Lori accused Ryan of sexually abusing their children. Ryan lost equal custody, and in 2007, Lori's brother Alex Cox attacked him, alleging abuse toward Lori and her children. Cox served 90 days in jail for the assault. In 2020, Colby revealed in an interview that he had been sexually abused by Ryan as a child. Ryan was found dead in his apartment in 2018, reportedly from arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. After Lori's arrest in 2020, authorities reviewed Ryan's death following the emergence of a recording in which Lori mentioned wanting to kill him. Like Nephi killed. However, no evidence of foul play was found. In February 2006, Lori married Leland Charles Anthony Vallow, commonly known as Charles. In 2013, the couple adopted Charles's grandnephew, Joshua Jackson (JJ) Vallow, after his birth parents were unable to care for him due to substance abuse issues. JJ was born with drugs in his system and spent time in neonatal intensive care before being cared for by his grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, for nearly a year. He was later adopted by Charles and Lori. JJ was eventually diagnosed with autism. Around 2015, Lori became interested in Chad Daybell's Standing in Holy Places series. Over the following years, she delved deeper into radical religious beliefs, exploring books on near-death experiences and listening to podcasts by excommunicated Mormons. In October 2018, Lori attended a Preparing a People event with her new friends Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastines, where she met Chad for the first time. Both Gibb and Pastines later remarked that Lori was very flirtatious with Chad during the conference. Chad told Lori that they had been married in multiple past lives, and the two began communicating privately after the event. Shortly after their meeting, Lori's husband went on a business trip, allowing her to host a small overnight gathering at her home. Chad and Gibb were among the attendees, and Chad captivated the group with his unique, Mormon-influenced beliefs. Lori became deeply attached to Chad and his teachings, and the two eventually began an affair. On December 5, 2018, Chad and Lori appeared together on the Preparing a People podcast episode titled, Time to Warrior Up, and they featured in several other episodes afterward. A religious group began to form around Chad and his teachings. Chad and Lori claimed to be part of the Church of the Firstborn, with Chad as its leader. The group included Lori's niece, Melanie Bedreau, Melanie Gibb, Alex Cox, and Zulema Pastines, who later became Cox's girlfriend and wife. Lori and Gibb also co-hosted a radical religious podcast together. Reincarnation, a concept not recognized by the LDS Church, was central to Chad's religious beliefs. He claimed to have lived 31 past lives, some on other planets, while Lori, according to him, had experienced 21 previous lives, 5 of which overlapped with his on Earth. Lori told Melanie Gibb that she and Chad were sealed because of their marriages and past lives, despite both having living spouses. When Gibb suggested they divorce their spouses, Lori insisted they couldn't due to guidance they were receiving from the other side of the veil. Chad believed himself to be the reincarnation of James the Less, and said Lori had been his wife, Elena, in that lifetime. He also claimed Lori had been Mary French, Joseph Smith's great-grandmother, and the wife of the prophet Moroni in other lives. Chad referred to these past lives as multiple probations, a belief held by some Mormon fundamentalist groups who view such probations as necessary for achieving exaltation. Chad categorized people as light or dark, associating them with either Jesus Christ or Satan. He and Lori devised a scoring system to rank people's alignment, and those deemed dark were believed to be possessed by evil spirits. They performed castings, rituals involving prayers and scripture readings to expel these spirits. According to their teachings, some possessed individuals became zombies, and they believed the only way to eliminate a zombie was to kill the person. Lori, Zulema Pastines, and 5 other women in their group, calling themselves the 7 Gatherers, conducted these rituals together, sometimes via Zoom. Chad and Lori also assigned people a score on a vibration scale, claiming higher vibrations indicated special powers or the potential for translation to higher realms. Their beliefs extended to ideas of teleportation, dark and light portals, and supernatural communication. Chad claimed he could create portals to interact spiritually with Lori, receive revelations, and access other realms. Chad predicted that the world would end on July 22, 2020. He told followers he was guided by angels and could see hidden truths, while Lori claimed direct communication with God and Jesus. Lori believed she was an exalted goddess, destined to lead the 144,000 survivors of the apocalypse alongside Chad. Zulema Pastines later told investigators that Lori considered herself beyond accountability for her earthly actions due to her exalted status. Lindsay Park, executive director of the Sunstone Education Foundation, categorized these beliefs as a form of Mormon fundamentalism, albeit without polygamy, or as Mormon fanfic, taking LDS tenets and reimagining them to an extreme degree. Journalist Leah Sotilli, author of When the Moon Turns to Blood, described Chad and Lori as operating at the far-right fringes of the LDS Church, enabled by an ecosystem of extremism within those circles. By February 2019, Lori reportedly informed Charles that she no longer cared about him or JJ, before disappearing for 58 days. That same month, Charles filed for divorce, alleging threats to his life, as well as Lori stealing his truck and $35,000 from their joint accounts. In his filing, Charles stated that Lori claimed he was possessed by a dark spirit named Ned Schneider. She also told him she was a god, with a mission to prepare the 144,000 for Christ's second coming in July 2020, and threatened to kill him if he interfered with her divine purpose. Acting on his attorney's advice, Charles sought a protective order against Lori but withdrew it a month later, saying he wanted to attempt reconciliation. However, he was so alarmed by Lori's behavior that he changed the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy from Lori to his sister Kay. Lori only learned of this change after Charles's death. Text messages later recovered by Arizona police revealed that Chad, Lori, and Alex Cox referred to Charles as Ned or Hiplos, the alleged dark spirit possessing him. Lori told her religious group that Charles had become a zombie, and several members joined in praying for his death. After discovering Lori's affair with Chad, Charles confronted her about it. 11 days before his death, he emailed Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, to inform her of the infidelity. Evidence showed Tammy opened and deleted the email before blocking Charles's address. On July 1, 2019, Charles informed Lori that he planned to meet Tammy in person. Around this time, Lori and Chad were frequently communicating using burner phones. On July 11, 2019, Charles went to Lori's home in Chandler, Arizona, to pick up JJ. Alex Cox was present, and a confrontation ensued, during which Cox shot and killed Charles, claiming self-defense. Cox alleged that Charles had hit him with a bat, prompting him to retrieve his gun. Tylee reportedly witnessed part of the altercation but fled with JJ before the shooting. No charges were filed. Neighbors later reported hearing loud music and a pool party at Lori's home that same day. Cox later told Zulema Pastines he felt no remorse, believing he had killed a zombie. Charles's attorneys had previously expressed concerns about JJ's safety, emphasizing his need for a consistent routine due to his autism. While Charles was also worried for Tylee's well-being, he had no legal standing to include her in the filings, as she was not his biological daughter, nor had he adopted her. Days after Charles's death, Chad sent Lori a series of romantic text messages in the form of a love story. The narrative, which investigators referred to as a romance novel, featured characters James and Elena as stand-ins for Chad and Lori and described their intimate relationship in detail. By the end of August, Lori moved with her children to Rexburg, Idaho, where Alex Cox also relocated. Prior to the move, Lori sold JJ's service dog. While living in Rexburg, neighbors noticed JJ displaying erratic behavior, as Lori frequently left him outside unsupervised for long periods. When questioned, Lori did not mention JJ's autism, instead claiming he was her niece's drug baby. Tylee was last seen on September 8, 2019, at Yellowstone National Park with JJ, Lori, and Alex Cox. She was never enrolled in any school in Idaho, despite Lori's claims that she was attending BYU Idaho. On September 17, 2019, a doorbell camera recorded JJ playing with a friend, marking the last known footage of him. He attended Rexburg's Kennedy Elementary School on September 20th, but by September 22nd, he had vanished. That night, Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend, David Warwick, were staying at Lori's home. Around 10:30 p.m., Warwick saw Alex Cox take a sleeping JJ upstairs to his bedroom, which was his last confirmed sighting. The next morning, JJ was gone, and Lori told Gibb and Warwick that JJ had been misbehaving, so Alex had taken him. On September 23rd, JJ had an unexcused absence from school, and the following day, Lori informed Rexburg Elementary that she would be homeschooling him. In the months following her children's disappearances, Lori continued to collect the Social Security survivor benefits each child received after the death of their father. In October 2019, 2 Venmo payments from Tylee's account were sent to her older half-brother, Colby Ryan, with messages of love attached. This was the last communication Colby received from Tylee. When he texted her out of concern, he got replies from her phone saying she was safe but too busy to talk. As his calls went unanswered, Colby grew more worried. Brandon Boudreau and Melanie Gibb later revealed that Lori and Chad were convinced Tylee and JJ were possessed and had become zombies. Zulema Pastines testified that Chad had told his followers that JJ would die soon and then be reborn as Colby's son. The FBI uncovered text messages where Lori and Chad discussed Tylee and JJ's possession and referred to a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children. In one exchange, Lori and Alex Cox discussed working on Z's, which was a reference to zombies. On October 2, 2019, Brandon Boudreau, the estranged husband of Lori's niece Melanie, was shot at from a Jeep while driving home in Gilbert, Arizona. The bullet missed Boudreau's head by inches. Boudreau, who had been close to Charles and Lori Vallow's family, recognized the Jeep as a vehicle used by Tylee Ryan. The Jeep drove away, but Boudreau could give its license plate number to the police, who identified it as being registered to Charles Vallow. Melanie became very involved with her aunt's religious activities in 2018 and insisted that she and her husband buy food stockpiles for the end of the world. During the summer of 2019, she had demanded a divorce, which was not yet finalized when Boudreau was shot at. Boudreau said he had been blindsided by the divorce request, which he blamed on Melanie's involvement in her aunt's cult. After it became known that Tylee and JJ were missing, Boudreau was convinced that Charles's death, the children's disappearance, and the attempt on his life were all connected to Lori's religious group. In February 2020, Boudreau filed a court document claiming that the attempt on his life was motivated by insurance money, that the gunman was probably Lori's recently deceased brother Alex Cox, and that Melanie was likely aware of Tylee and JJ's whereabouts. By tracking Alex Cox's cell phone data, investigators later found that Cox had searched on the internet for directions to Boudreau's address and had been present near Boudreau's home during the hours before the shooting. On that day, Cox and Lori had communicated several times. Lori had later made internet searches about a shooting in Gilbert, Arizona. In February 2019, Chad told his neighbors, Todd and Alice Gilbert, that he had received a vision indicating that Tammy would pass away before her 50th birthday. On October 9, 2019, Tammy reported being shot at in her driveway by a masked man who appeared to use a paintball gun. Although the man pulled the trigger multiple times, the gun was apparently unloaded. Police treated the incident as a prank and could not identify the shooter. Just 10 days later, Tammy was found dead in her home, reportedly from natural causes. Chad stated that she had retired the previous evening feeling unwell with a severe cough and died in her sleep. He also claimed that Tammy had been suffering from low blood pressure, seizures, and adverse reactions to homeopathic remedies, though none of these conditions were reflected in her medical records. Tammy's funeral was arranged in Utah 3 days after her death. Alice Gilbert expressed surprise at how quickly the funeral was organized, feeling it seemed planned. The Gilberts also testified that Chad appeared unfazed and conducted himself in a businesslike manner, unlike his children, who were visibly grieving. Chad's sister-in-law, Vallow-Daybell, observed that his behavior at the funeral felt off, noting that he just didn't seem upset. Jason Gwilliam commented that Chad appeared to be not crying but trying to cry. During the funeral, Chad mentioned that Tammy had suffered from depression, described her as difficult to live with, and even referred to her as lazy. According to police reports, Chad received life insurance payouts totaling $430,000, around $512,000 in 2023, following Tammy's death. Tammy's body was initially not autopsied due to Chad's refusal and the coroner's acceptance of his decision. However, after the body was exhumed and an autopsy was conducted, it was revealed that Tammy had been asphyxiated. The autopsy results, completed by February 2021, were not made public until April 2023, during Lori Vallow-Daybell's trial. Investigators later discovered text messages between Chad and Lori, in which they claimed that Tammy was in limbo and had been possessed by a spirit named Viola. At some point, they also told their followers that Tammy had become a zombie. Alex Cox's phone was found near the Daybell's residence on October 9, several hours before Tammy was shot at. It pinged again in the same area 10 days later, on the night of Tammy's death. Police also found an AR-15 at Cox's home that resembled the description Tammy had given of the supposed paintball gun. Cox had made several internet searches about the use of an AR-15 and how a Grendel round would affect a Dodge Dakota, the vehicle owned by the Daybells. Prosecutors later asserted that the paintball gun, seen by Tammy on October 9, was actually a real gun, which may have jammed or misfired, and that Alex Cox was likely the shooter. Zulema Pastines testified that she had been with Lori and her niece Melanie to conduct a casting ritual the night Tammy was attacked. At some point during that evening, Lori became angry after a phone conversation, calling the other person an idiot, moron, stupid. After hanging up, she remarked, "Idiot can't do anything by himself." Chad introduced Lori to his children the day after Tammy's funeral. 1 week after Tammy's death, he also told Todd and Alice Gilbert that he had found the woman he would marry. Days later, Chad brought Lori to meet the Gilberts. Alice Gilbert described the situation as awkward, with Chad and Lori laughing and giggling, and being very affectionate to each other, more than Gilbert had seen Chad be with Tammy. Chad also mentioned that Lori recently had a daughter who had passed away. Chad told Tammy's sister, Samantha Gwilliam, that Tammy's spirit had appeared to him at the cemetery and advised him to move on. He also told Samantha that he and Lori had bonded over their recently dead spouses and that Lori had no children, so they would be empty nesters. Chad and Lori were married in Hawaii on November 5, 2019, 2 weeks after the death, not yet known by others to be a killing, of Tammy, and 2 months after Tylee and JJ were murdered, a fact also not yet known by others, who did not even know that the children were missing. Apart from his children, Chad did not inform his family beforehand. Chad's mother discovered that he and Lori were married upon meeting Lori. Investigators later found in Lori's web history that she had ordered a pair of wedding rings in August 2019, several months before Tammy's death, and that she had searched for wedding dresses on the day of Tammy's burial. On November 26, police visited Lori's townhouse in Rexburg for a welfare check on JJ at the request of his grandmother, Charles Vallow's sister, Kay Vallow Woodcock. A police detective initially found Chad and Alex Cox at Lori's home. Both men acted suspiciously, with Alex Cox, not knowing that it was Kay who had requested the welfare check, claiming that JJ was with his grandmother, and Chad, whom the detective knew was married to Lori, saying that he was a friend of Alex and that he hardly knew Lori. Police later reached Lori, who claimed that JJ was in Arizona with her friend Melanie Gibb. However, when contacted by police, Gibb stated that JJ had not been with her for several months. That night, a neighbor observed Lori and Alex Cox packing a truck outside her home. The following day, when the police and FBI arrived to search the house, it was abandoned. Chad's home was also searched by investigators. Lori and Chad returned to Hawaii, where they resided in a gated community in Princeville on the island of Kauai, living off the money Chad had received from Tammy's life insurance. While searching for a home in Hawaii, Chad had written in an application that the couple had no children. Prosecutors in Idaho became involved in the case when police requested a warrant for locating the Jeep from which Brandon Boudreaux had been shot at in Arizona. On December 6, 2019, Melanie Gibb contacted the police, revealing that both Lori and Chad had called her separately on November 26 and had asked her to tell police that JJ was with her. Police efforts to locate JJ led to the discovery that Tylee was also missing. A connection was made between the investigations in Idaho and those in Arizona. Law enforcement agencies intensified their inquiries about the children's whereabouts, as well as Chad and Lori's departure from Idaho. It was also decided to further investigate Tammy's death. Her body was exhumed for an autopsy on December 11. On December 20, the Rexburg Police Department announced that the children were officially missing and asked the public's assistance in locating them. Investigators expressed concern for the children's safety, asserting that they were not with Chad and Lori and that Lori had refused to cooperate with the investigation, opting to leave the state with Chad instead. Police also announced that the children's disappearance could be linked to Tammy Daybell's suspicious death. The next day, police said Lori and Chad were persons of interest. The case soon received national coverage, with family and friends describing Chad and Lori's cult-like beliefs in interviews and on social media posts. On December 23, 2019, the Daybells released statements through a Rexburg attorney, who said that Chad Daybell was a loving husband and he has the support of his children in this matter, adding that Lori was a devoted mother, who resents assertions to the contrary, and that the allegations would be addressed once they have moved beyond speculation and rumor. Colby Ryan, JJ's grandparents Larry and Kay Woodcock, and Chad's brother, Matt Daybell, issued messages asking Lori and Chad to return the children. On January 7, 2020, the Woodcocks held a press conference in Rexburg offering a $20,000 reward for the children's return or for any information leading to them. On January 25, 2020, after Lori and Chad were located in Kauai, law enforcement agents served them with a court order requiring Lori to physically produce, within 5 days, Tylee and JJ to the Idaho Department of Welfare or to the Rexburg Police Department. The next day, police seized the couple's rental car and searched their rental townhome in Princeville, where they found Tylee's debit card and JJ's iPad. Also on January 26, the Daybells were confronted over the children's disappearance by East Idaho News reporter Nate Eaton. They refused to answer questions. In February 2020, authorities focused on a storage locker in Rexburg that had been rented by Lori in October 2019. They discovered belongings linked to Tylee and JJ, including clothing, bikes, and photographs. These items had been left behind when Lori abruptly left Rexburg in late November 2019. Video footage captured Lori and Alex Cox moving items to and from the locker before her departure. On November 24, 2019, Chad Daybell gave Alex Cox a patriarchal blessing, which he had no standing to give in the LDS Church, saying that Alex had assisted him and Lori in ways that can never be repaid. Chad called Alex a prophet and a hero and predicted he would have a future as a messenger of the Lord. The recording of this blessing was later found by investigators on Lori's iCloud account. Alex Cox died on December 12, 2019. His death was attributed to blood clots and high blood pressure. The day before his death, Cox had been informed by Lori and Chad that Tammy Daybell's body was going to be exhumed. Zulema Pastines later testified that Cox had told her he was worried about being Lori and Chad's fall guy. On February 20, 2020, Lori was arrested in Hawaii by the Kauai Police Department. She was extradited back to Idaho on March 5. Lori faced charges in Madison County, Idaho, including 2 felony counts of desertion and non-support of dependent children, along with 3 misdemeanors. Her initial bail was set at $5 million but was later reduced to $1 million after her extradition. In May, Lori appeared in court in Rexburg to request a further reduction of her bail, but the request was denied. Several local bond companies reportedly refused to work with her. After Lori's arrest, Chad returned to Idaho and attempted to persuade the Gilberts to use their home as collateral for Lori's bond, claiming that Jesus had inspired the idea. When Alice Gilbert questioned him about the children and confronted him regarding his statement about Lori's daughter being dead, Chad responded that it was a custody matter. He further mentioned that Tylee didn't like people and did not like him, referring to her in the past tense. On June 9, police discovered human remains buried in unmarked graves in the backyard of Chad Daybell's home during a search. The remains were found in an area known as the Pet Cemetery, previously used by the Daybell family to bury their pets. As the search was underway, Chad called Lori, who was in jail, to warn her about the situation. When police began exhuming the bodies, Chad attempted to drive away from the scene but was chased down and arrested for obstruction or concealment of evidence. His bail was set at $1 million the following day. Authorities decided to search Daybell's property after tracking Alex Cox's cell phone. On September 9, 2019, the day after Tylee's last confirmed sighting, Cox's phone had pinged at Lori's home at night and later at Daybell's home in the morning. On September 23, the day after JJ was last seen, Cox's phone again pinged at Daybell's property. Investigators also intercepted a text exchange from September 9 between Chad and his wife, Tammy. Chad told her he had shot a large raccoon in their backyard and buried it in the pet cemetery. This raised suspicion since raccoons are typically nocturnal. On June 10, the Woodcock and Ryan families confirmed that the remains found at Daybell's property were those of Tylee and JJ, a finding officially confirmed by Rexburg police on June 13. Tylee's body was burned, and her hands had been severed. JJ's body was wrapped in plastic, buried with more care under rocks and wooden planks. JJ was determined to have been asphyxiated with a plastic bag and duct tape over his mouth. The cause of Tylee's death could not be definitively determined due to the state of her remains, but it was ruled a homicide by unspecified means. Forensic analysis revealed several fractures in Tylee's bones, suggesting an attempt to dismember her. Her DNA was found on a pickaxe and shovel seized from Daybell's home. Fingerprints from Alex Cox and Lori's hair were found on the plastic and duct tape covering JJ's body. In August, Chad Daybell was excommunicated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for his religious teachings, which the media later described as part of a Doomsday cult. On July 2, 2020, prosecutors dropped 2 charges against Lori related to desertion and non-support of dependent children, and instead charged her with obstruction or concealment of evidence regarding her children's remains. On July 17, in light of the 2 felony counts against Lori having been dropped, her bond was lowered by Madison County Judge Michelle Mallard. The bond was set at $50,000 for each charge, totaling $150,000. It was further noted that Chad would still need to post $1 million in Fremont County to be released from jail. On May 25, 2021, Chad and Lori were indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, as well as grand theft by deception regarding the children. Lori was also charged with grand theft related to her children's Social Security survivor benefits. Chad faced an insurance fraud charge related to Tammy's life insurance policy. In June 2021, Lori was indicted by a grand jury in Maricopa County, Arizona, on 1 count of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for the death of Charles Vallow. Police documents read: "The evidence shows that Charles's death was a planned event and necessary to prevent Charles and others from confronting Lori about her extreme religious beliefs when he came to town. The death of Charles Vallow was also necessary in order for Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow to marry and fulfill their religious prophecy." In July 2021, prosecutors in Maricopa County decided not to prosecute Chad Daybell in connection with the death of Charles Vallow, citing no reasonable likelihood of conviction. In September 2021, Chad Daybell's children issued a statement defending their father's innocence and claiming he had been Fooled in the worst, most deadly way possible. By Lori Vallow. In 2022, Lori was indicted by a grand jury on one count of first-degree premeditated murder related to claims that she conspired with her brother to kill Brandon Boudreaux. Prosecutors believe that Lori hoped to access Boudreaux's money through her niece. A jury trial for the Madison County charges against Lori was initially set for January 25 to 29, 2021. On May 27, 2021, Lori was found incompetent and unfit to stand trial, and her case was stayed. On April 11, 2022, she was deemed competent to stand trial after mental health treatment. On October 6, 2022, after Lori's attorney filed several motions, Judge Stephen W. Boyce issued an order indicating the case was suspended until her competency to stand trial could be determined. On November 16, she was once again found competent. Lori and Chad both pleaded not guilty to all charges in Idaho. Their cases were split in March 2023, at Chad's request. The reasons were that Chad had waived his right to a speedy trial and his attorneys said they needed more time to review DNA evidence. Chad's attorneys also cited the mutually antagonistic nature of the defendants' positions. Since Lori had not waived her right to a swift trial, the court ruled that her case would proceed as planned. On March 21, 2023, the judge removed the death penalty from Lori Vallow-Daybell due to newly uncovered DNA evidence, discovered too close to the trial to be tested and admitted into court. Lori Vallow-Daybell's trial began on April 3, 2023, in Boise, Idaho. She did not testify in her own defense. Her lawyers did not call any witnesses, while the prosecution called about 60 people to testify. In the light of the evidence that pointed to Alex Cox's direct involvement in the murders, prosecutors stated that Lori Vallow-Daybell had groomed and manipulated her brother to participate in her crimes. Lori's sister Summer Shiflett testified that Alex had suffered brain damage in a car accident and that his decision-making was stuck at a teenage level. Zulema Pastine said that Alex was entirely under the influence of Chad and Lori, who had convinced him that he was a reincarnated warrior of God and that the only reason he had come to Earth was to protect Lori. In his closing argument, Lori's attorney Jim Archibald depicted her as being under Chad Daybell's psychological control. On May 12, 2023, Lori Vallow-Daybell was found guilty of all criminal charges. On July 31, 2023, she was sentenced to consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for, respectively, the murder of Tylee, the murder of J.J., and the conspiracy to commit murder charge of Tammy, in addition to fines and restitution for the grand theft charges. Judge Boyce said that Vallow-Daybell had murdered her children to remove them as obstacles and to profit financially, by choosing the most evil and destructive path possible, and going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole to justify their killings. Before her sentencing, Lori made her first public statement since her arrest. She said that she had been speaking to Jesus, as well as to her children and to Tammy, and that Tylee, JJ, and Tammy were happy and extremely busy in heaven. She also stated, Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen, suicides happen, fatal side effects from medications happen. On November 9, 2023, Chad Daybell's legal team filed 3 motions to remove the death penalty in his murder trial. The final motion stated that Lori had manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control, and that Chad had lesser culpability than his co-defendant, who did not face the death penalty. The motions were denied in December. Chad Daybell's trial opened on April 10, 2024. In his opening statement, prosecutor Rob Wood depicted him as a man motivated by sex, money, and power, and craving for significance, who saw his spouse and Lori's children as obstacles to his rightful destiny. Chad's attorney John Pryor painted him as a religious man who had been lured into an inappropriate relationship by Lori Vallow. His statement also focused on Alex Cox's history of violence and his role as Lori's protector. On May 16, Chad's defense team filed a motion for acquittal after it appeared that an amended indictment had incorrectly listed J.J. Vallow's death as having occurred between September 8 to 9, 2019, instead of September 22 to 23. Judge Boyce ruled that this clerical error was not grounds for acquittal. Two of Chad's children, Emma and Garth, testified in their father's defense and said their mother had been experiencing health problems and was getting tired extremely easily. On the contrary, three former colleagues of Tammy Daybell said that she seemed healthy and energetic up until the day before her death. Tammy's sister also testified that Tammy had seemed fine when she visited her on October 14, 2019. Chad did not take the stand. During the closing arguments, Prosecutor Lindsay Blake summarized the evidence that pointed to Chad's crucial role in coordinating and giving a religious justification to the murders. Pryor painted Lori and Alex Cox as the true culprits, stating that Lori had been motivated by greed, that she had manipulated Chad all along, and that Chad would likely have been her next victim. On May 30, 2024, the jury found Chad Daybell guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy in the deaths of Tammy, Tylee, and J.J. He was also found guilty of grand theft by deception related to the children's killing and of insurance fraud related to Tammy's. The Woodcocks expressed their satisfaction at the verdict. Larry Woodcock commented about Chad and Lori's crimes. "What did they accomplish? Nothing. What did they do? They destroyed families." It was confirmed that the prosecution would seek the death penalty for Chad. At his sentencing hearing, Chad chose not to present any mitigation evidence. On June 1, 2024, he was sentenced to death. For the insurance fraud charges, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison, each to run concurrent to death and to the restitution of $130,000 plus $300,000. Since Chad had been deemed indigent, no fines were added to the insurance fraud sentence. Tammy Daybell's extended family, Matt and Heather Daybell, as well as the Boudreau, Cox, and Shiflett families issued statements expressing their relief at the end of the trials and their thoughts for the victims, and praising the work of law enforcement, the prosecution team, judge and jurors. In November 2023, Lori was extradited to Arizona to face her 2 conspiracy charges there. She pleaded not guilty to both. In February 2024, her trial was scheduled to begin on August 1 of the same year, though the judge mentioned that it might be moved at a later date due to the amount of evidence to process. In June, Lori's defense team in Arizona filed a motion requesting a delay for the trial. Lori objected and continued to assert her right to a speedy trial. On July 2, the lawyer's request was granted and the trial date was moved to February 24, 2025. In October 2024, Lori's attorneys made a request for a competency hearing. 1 week later, Lori requested to waive her right to counsel and act as her own lawyer. At a December 5, 2024 hearing, Lori was deemed by a doctor to be mentally fit and competent to stand trial. The judge also granted Lori's request to represent herself. Lori said at the hearing that she had real trial experience and had been studying case law since her incarceration. The court decided that the Charles Vallow case and the Brandon Boudreau case would be tried separately. The judge moved again the trial date for the Charles Vallow conspiracy case, this time to March 31, 2025. Scheduling for Lori's trial on the charge of Brandon Boudreau's attempted murder will take place after the conclusion of the first trial. And that concludes today's episode. Thank you so much for watching the Grim Files. If you found this video insightful or interesting, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support really helps the channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you more content like this. If you have thoughts or questions, drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and the like button. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. Have a wonderful day.